Sales Influence Podcast, where we talk about finding the why and how people buy. I'm your host, Victor Antonio. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for letting me those beautiful ears. And if you're watching me on video, thank you for letting me those eyeballs. Today, I got a sales guru for you. I got a guy. I had to beg. I had to ask repeatedly like I usually do. But in all honesty, he was so gracious to actually accept my invitation, to be honest, on the first request. Please welcome to the Sales Influence Podcast, Jeff Shore. What's happening?
Victor, my friend, good to be with you. Let's have some fun, shall we?
Shall we talk sales today? What do you think, Jeff?
Let's do that. It's my favorite topic. You know that. Yours too. It works out perfectly.
So, Jeff, give them the 411 on who are you, and don't be modest. I hate when speakers come out here and be modest. You're a sales guy, no modesty. Lay it down.
Yeah, I'm a sales junkie. I just love sort of like you, Victor. I like pulling apart the sale and examining the guts and figuring it out. And I sold frontline for many, many years. I was national sales director for a very, very large Fortune 500 company. Last 20 years, I've been doing this. And although my focus has shifted over the years, as I know yours has as well, to really look at it and say, it's not so much about how do salespeople sell, it's about how do people want to buy and how do we make it easy for them to do what they want to do anyway. So I've just really gotten off on trying to understand what goes on in the mind of a customer when they're thinking about making a purchase decision. And to me, that topic is limitless, right? Because we're such complex human beings. But I just find buyers to be really fascinating people. And in fact, it kind of pisses me off when I hear salespeople who are complaining about, oh, these buyers are liars. And I'm like, you know what? They're just people who need a problem solved. Let's look at it that way.
I think so. You recently wrote an article, and I was looking at it this morning, actually. You put it, it's on LinkedIn. And I think you went through a little buying process. Let's start there before we jump into your book.
Yeah. So for me, I think every salesperson should start there before they do anything else. You got to ask the question, how does a buyer want to buy? And so, if you think of it like if you're a physician, right? A physician has got all kinds of knowledge, all kinds of tools, all kinds of drugs and techniques and surgeries and everything else. None of them matter until you really get to know who that person is standing in front of you and what their problem, what their pain point is. So I don't know about you, but if I went into a doctor and said, my stomach hurts, and the doctor said, oh, no problem, I've got some pills for that. Take these, you'll be just fine. I'm gonna go find another doctor. So there is that idea. You gotta be able to look at it and say, this all starts with a buyer-centric viewpoint. Who is this person and what problem needs to be solved?
So Jeff, one of the things I want to know, I wrote this down because I didn't want to forget it, because I always like to ask people this. What got you, before we jump into the topic heavily, what got you into sales? I mean, what was a sales? I can tell it's going to be good already.
Yeah. Well, here's what happened. So, my initial background was in real estate, and we still have a lot of real estate clients. But my initial background was in real estate, and it's almost embarrassing, but this is way back when I was a kid, I think when I was in high school, I read Irwin Shaw's Rich Man, Poor Man. And I looked at it and I said, this is about, the story revolves around this entrepreneur. And right about that time I read that, I also read Zig Ziglar's See You at the Top. And I thought between those two books, it really sort of lit the entrepreneurial fire. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to do something that was self-contained and really, either I'm going to make it or I'm not going to make it, but I'm not going to put my future in somebody else's hand. So I was watching this late night infomercial. I was in the restaurant business at the time. I was watching this late night infomercial. And this guy comes on talking about how you can get rich by buying real estate using other people's money. And he was just so excited. And I was like, man, I'm all in on this. And
was that Dave Delgado?
It wasn't, but it doesn't matter because they just change their suits, right, to hand their suit to somebody else. And then once somebody goes to jail, somebody else steps in and picks it up. I honestly, I don't even remember the guy's name. I know now that most of the things he was saying were either highly impractical or highly illegal, but I bought his cassette tapes, right? That's how long ago I bought his cassette tapes. So I started to do this, and it was like, it didn't take me long to figure out, no, this is not above board at all. But it really got the juices flowing for sales in particular and real estate specifically. And so I became a realtor. I took the test, I became a realtor, and that's where I started my sales process. I didn't really know how that was all going to go, what it was all going to be about. But as it turns out, I just really loved it. I mean, I took to sales like a fish to water, and was I was a pretty darn good salesperson, if I don't mind saying. And then I had the opportunity to coach, which I loved even more. And one thing led to another, and here I am.
I love it. If you think back about your sales, that transition into the real estate market, I think that's why I first read one of your books. I think it was actually a real estate book I read. And in that process, in that transition, what did you find hard? And I want you to talk to I'll call it the introverts, or the maybe people who are just starting out in sales. What did you find hard, and then how did you overcome that?
Yeah, so that's a really, really good question, I think an important question for everybody in sales. And I'm going to couch it this way: when I wrote the book "Be Bold and Win the Sale," which is all about comfort addictions in sales and how we have to overcome our comfort addiction if we're going to be successful in sales, I interviewed a number of top-ranking salespeople, and one of them was a gentleman named Alex Tava. He was the number one salesperson for Ferrari in the world at that time. He was selling out of a showroom it was in the Wynn Hotel in the Las Vegas Strip on the first floor of the Wynn Hotel. And I interviewed him, and I asked him a very similar question to what you just asked me. And he said, one of the problems that I have in selling Ferraris is that my product is too cool. So the number of things that I can talk about as it relates to a Ferrari, right? I can talk about body styling and racing history and engine performance and awards that it's won and drivability. I can go all day long. The problem is everybody buys a Ferrari for a different reason. So I can very easily talk about what I find to be so cool, finding myself horribly disconnected from my customer. And that's what I found out early on about real estate. I wanted to talk about real estate. I wanted to talk about homes. I want to talk about just everything having to do with real estate. And for the customer, it didn't matter. What they knew was that they couldn't effectively live their life in the place they were in right now, and they needed something that was going to solve their problem. They didn't
I lo-
care about so much that I
love
wanted
that.
to talk about.
I love that, because that's that one of these, right? Two planes, two ships in the night just missing each
Completely.
other.
Absolutely.
And that's a great example, actually. That's a great visual. By the way, you use the phrase and you toss it around like candy, like it means nothing, but I know it means more. Comfort addiction.
Yeah.
Come on, go deep on that one.
Yeah. Well, this started from a personal experience where I was really looking at my own life about this is 6 or 7 years ago now, and recognizing and it took a little while to get to this point, but looking at it and recognizing that a lot of the decisions that I was making in my life were based on my desire for comfort. And over time, I said, man, this has all the properties of an addiction. So if I looked at it and I said, just as an example, when you're making decisions, right? Uh, Cheeseburgers are comfortable, broccoli is uncomfortable, right? My sofa is comfortable, my elliptical is uncomfortable. And I was making life choices according to not what was best for me, but what was comfortable for me. And I saw that in myself first. Then I started to look at salespeople. I saw exactly the same thing. So if you look at it, for example, the idea that I can make a phone call or I can send an email, what's the first question that pops into my head? The question is, what's more comfortable? And that's why we send an email rather than making a phone call. Because what we find here, when I did the deep dive in the research, it just blew my mind, and it was really life changing for me, not just in my career, but in my personal life as well. But I started to look at it and recognize that the brain's primary job is to keep you alive. Well, the
Hmm.
problem is the brain has an heightened threat sensitivity. So it sees something that is uncomfortable, it interprets it as a threat, and then it sends a message that says, run away. Go find the easiest way to be able to deal with this. I mean, somebody you're going to want to interview for your show at some point, a guy, he's a UCLA psychologist, his name is Dr. Mark Shaw, and he wrote a book called Your Survival Instinct is Killing You. Phenomenal book. And it speaks to the idea that our brain, thinking it's trying to keep us alive, is actually making us a slave to our own comfort addictions. So I started in my own life first to try to systematically dismantle my own comfort addiction. So, at age 50, I'm older now, but at age 52, I looked and said, I've been a hockey fan, ice hockey. I've been a hockey fan all my life. I've always wanted to play, except that I don't know how to skate.
Mm.
Okay,
That's a problem.
so
That's a.
that is a problem, right? But that was also an excuse. So I looked at it
Mm.
and I said, people who do know how to skate, they didn't come out of the womb learning how to skate, right? Knowing how to skate, they learned. So I hired a coach. teach me to skate. I joined this learn to play hockey class. Now 2 nights a week, I'm a rink rat. I'm out there playing hockey. I'm having the time of my life for something I should have done a long time ago. Sitting right over here in the corner of my office right now is a bass guitar. Started taking lessons about 4 weeks ago because I've always thought it was a cool instrument, and why not? So just systematically to be able to look at it and say, how do I make sure I'm not living my life by doing nothing more than following my own discomforts? But certainly in the sales process, and I know you've seen this, salespeople ask what's easy, not what's right.
Yeah, I love that. By the way, I played bass.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Oh man, we'll have to have a conversation about that. I'm having a great time. It's really fun.
Bass is. I was a Stanley Clark fan. I'm a Victor Wooten fan, that whole thing. So anyway, back to sales. I love that whole comfort addiction because, and I love the fact that you gave an example, email versus a phone call. I'll take the email all day.
All day.
And so, when you're training salespeople, how do you get them out of that? What are some of your, before we jump into your new book,
sure.
How do you get them out of that?
Yeah.
How do you begin to make them uncomfortable?
Well, what was interesting in the research for the book, I was working with just to understand my own issues and to be able to get to this deeper, I was working with a psychologist, a guy named Dr.
I got to pause here because I really like the way Victor, I just first had to work on my issues first.
Yeah,
it's all about me first. It's all about me right now, Victor.
Well, look, I'm a big fan of Dan Sullivan, the founder of the Strategic Coach Program. And one of the things that he always says is all change begins by telling the truth. Yeah. All change begins by telling the truth. So if you're not willing to be honest with yourself, and I think the lies we tell ourselves are the most dangerous lies of all. So if you're not willing to be honest with yourself, you can't get anywhere along those lines. So as I was looking at this for myself, I was working with a psychologist, and I had posed the idea that this has all the properties of an addiction, and he agreed with me. And he suggested that the number one treatment for addictions in the United States is something called cognitive behavioral therapy. So then I started to do this dive into cognitive behavioral therapy about the decisions that we make before we are faced with that moment of discomfort. Because the concept is that every time we are uncomfortable, every moment of discomfort also has a corresponding moment of decision. Every time I'm uncomfortable, I'm going to have a decision to make. And it's the quality of the decisions that we make when we are uncomfortable that's really, frankly, going to determine the quality of our lives. So if we can train ourselves to recognize that the comfort addict part of me is going to tell me, run away, right? Just give into your discomfort. In fact, I'll even give you a good, juicy rationalization as to why you should do that. If I can train myself for those moments in advance, then by the time I get to that discomfort, I've already rehearsed it in my head. I already know what I'm going to do. So when it comes time to make the phone call, when it comes time to ask the closing question, when you know a customer is going to complain about your pricing, whatever it happens to be, you can prepare in advance for that moment of discomfort. And you can be prepared long before you ever get there. That's the key, not to wait until you are uncomfortable, but to rehearse that and determine your action before you are uncomfortable.
I love that. It's almost like, how do you call it, the battle plan before you go into battle. Because in the heat of the battle, it just gets too emotional and you make the wrong decisions. So tell me about this wonderful new book you have. I've read it. I loved it. I think I've told you that already. I think I talked about it. But tell us about this new book.
Yeah. So, if you go on Amazon and you type in sales follow-up, you're not going to get a lot of hits. A lot of people talk about follow-up. There's been great material written in blog posts and articles and all of that. But I hadn't seen anything that really just gave you a one-size-fits-all resource. And as I was looking at it, as it turns out, I had to make some decisions along the way. There's a lot of material that's on the cutting room floor. You can only put so much into the book, but I wanted to be able to have an overview that really addressed it from this perspective. How do we make follow-up fun? And this follow-up can be in two different ways. We could be talking about prospecting follow-up, where you first get a lead. How do you connect with that customer and stay in the loop until you can make a presentation? But then it's also when you've made a presentation, the customer says, not yet. What happens next? So it's going to apply both ways. But I think most salespeople look at follow-up and they find it tedious, they find it laborious, and they find it not very fun. I want to change all that. I want to make this an enjoyable part of the process. I think it can be fun. And frankly, if you're not having fun, your customers are not having fun anyway. So if you want them to enjoy it, you got to start with you.
So the book is called Follow Up and Close the Sale, by Jeff Shore, Follow Up and Close the Sale. And so, like I said, I read the book, and this is spirit of full disclosure here, Jeff. It's the serious part. That
Please.
I got the book. I'm like, oh God, another sales book, another sales book, right? I'm like, and then what I hate about sales books, and I read some, is that they're very here's what you should do, but not the how you should do it. There's the what and there's the how, right? Strategic versus tactical, and your book actually blended them nicely. And there's some real tactical stuff in the book, and I highlighted one of them in my podcast, and because I was like, this is a great little tactic. And so talk about the structure of the book and, the content that's in there and how it could actually help people.
Yeah. Well, you're absolutely right. It's here. This is the strategy. Here's the execution. And so you got to do both, right? There's no question about it. And so I start with strategy. I move into execution. It really begins by what we were just talking about. It picks up where Be Bold and Win the Sale left off, talking about comfort addiction. I talk about something called the resistance, that voice in your head that says, you don't want to make that phone call. You don't want to be that guy who's driving customers crazy. And so I talk about how do we fight that resistance? But then, like I do with, frankly, anything that I'm talking about, I always start with the customer's perspective, right? So from the customer's perspective, I use the framework of something that I refer to as emotional altitude. And it speaks to the level of positive emotional energy that a customer has when dealing with a product, an experience, or another person. So if you can think about shopping for a car and that you really love, and what's happening, that emotional altitude is rising within you, right? And you're feeling all in on that. My wife and I recently purchased a dog, and it was the same thing. You're shopping for a dog. It's a very emotional purchase, and the emotional altitude is very, very high. But if you're in that investigation stage and then you walk away, you haven't made a decision, you're going to think about it. I got to talk to this person. I got to resolve that issue, whatever it is. And the question is, what happens to the emotional altitude? It immediately begins to wane. And the more time that goes by without reconnecting to that emotional core, the more the customer becomes unmoored from their emotional altitude. And after a while, they just plain forget about you. And that is disastrous and, in my opinion, unforgivable if you're a salesperson. A customer might eliminate you because you don't have what they want and you're not going to get all the sales. But a customer eliminating you because you just fell out of their mind, that's on you. And so
That's on
that
you
was
every
the
time.
idea of sustaining that emotional altitude.
So when you look at, because one of the things you say this, I say this, all the great sales traders say this, is that if follow-up isn't part of your process, it simply doesn't get done. So how do you make it part of your process? It's an obvious question, but why is it that most people don't do it?
Yeah. Well, I think that because they don't see follow-up the right way. They see follow-up as a chore that either their CRM is telling them to do or their sales manager is telling them to do, but they don't really want to do. If it's something that was enjoyable, that was fun, that you wanted to do, then you got to change your paradigm first. If you see this something that is laborious and pointless and all of that, you're never going to do your best work, even if you do make your follow-up calls. So the first thing you have to do is look at it and say, how do I change the paradigm? And to me, the paradigm of follow-up can be summed up in one word, and that word is serve. How do I serve my customer? Not how do I annoy my customer? How do I serve my customer? If you're annoying your customer, you're doing it wrong. So if I start with that perspective, a lot of salespeople are going to look at it and go, oh, people don't want to hear from a salesperson calling and interrupting their dinner. And I would look at it this way. Suppose you had a doctor's appointment, and in that doctor's appointment, you shared some things and said, we're going to try this path. But the next day, your doctor called back during dinner. Okay, he's interrupting your dinner and said, you know what? I was looking at your file and I did a little research, and I think there's an option you're going to want to consider over here that might be able to solve this problem a lot quicker than we had first thought. Okay, that's the idea. Who listening to this right now would look at it and go, well, I would want to talk to my doctor. I'm eating dinner, for crying out loud. If your doctor is looking out for you, finding something that will improve your life and has a heart to serve, you're going to take that call in a heartbeat and you're going to appreciate it. So if you think that follow-up is just about, hey, just checking in, see if I'm going to get paid anytime soon, you're doing it wrong and you're wasting their time. But if you can look at it and say, here's a way I can improve my customer's life, that changes the paradigm, that makes you valuable, and it makes you the person that they want to talk to.
So Jeff, I'm going to take the salesperson side. I'm going to be
Sure.
on the salesperson side. I'm going to blame my manager.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'm just going to blame the manager because you know what? I don't really know how to serve my clients. I don't have enough content. I don't really know what they want. Coach me, talk me through that, walk me off the ledge, make me
Yeah.
excited.
So yeah, well, first of all, you know, let's go a little deeper on that, Victor. Set
Hmm.
this up a little bit more. Tell me
Okay.
about that prospect. Tell me what I do know. Do I know anything at all? Did this person come in off a web lead? What do I know about that
The
person?
person came in through a web lead. They looked at
Okay.
one of our videos. Marketing passed over this qualified lead, and
Yeah.
maybe they gave us their email and they said we're interested. Give us a call.
Yes. Okay, great. Good. Thank you
Okay.
very much. So let's start here. Uh, when we think about this, again, I know I sound like a broken record, and I know you've heard it from Victor many, many times here, but you always begin by the customer experience. What is the customer going through? Once you understand their journey, you can reverse engineer your sales presentation to make it easy for them to do what they want to do anyway. So let's think about that customer who went online, saw a video, did a little investigation, then filled out the contact me page. Before we go any further, you had better understand the Herculean event that just took place right there. Marketers talk about something called a bounce off rate. It's the percentage of times we get to a contact me page and leave the page without filling it out. In the United States, the bounce off rate is right around 97%. That means only 3% of people who get to the contact me page actually fill out the contact me page. And so, what do you know about those 3%? You know that they have a very strong need. You know that you are absolutely in the running, and you know that their emotional altitude is high at the moment that they fill out the page. The
Now, by the way,
more time, go ahead.
I was gonna say let's make sure we correct their mindset because sometimes salespeople will get that lead and they're cynical as hell. And they, as you're pointing out, which I think is brilliant, the Herculean task to
Yeah.
get the person there, the 3% to get them there, they've pretty much pre-qualified themselves, if we can say it. So you should be excited to get that lead, not thinking, they're probably not going to buy. Go from
Just
there.
look at it from your perspective. Victor, how often do you bounce off that page?
Probably about the same time,
Yeah,
97%.
right.
Yeah,
So if you are going to fill it out, what does it mean to you?
I'm interested. I'm very interested. I want
Very
more.
interested. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to talk to somebody right now. I've done some research, I've done some homework. I'm not filling this out everywhere. I want to talk to somebody right now. So you are absolutely right. And thank you for bringing up that point. You know, that person who got to that page, all you have to do is ask yourself, well, how do I respond? Excuse me. What do I do with that? And if you're one of those people who regularly bounces off, well, your customer is no different. All right. So now from there, if we've got that customer who just filled out that web lead, what's going to happen now? The more time that goes by, the more the emotional altitude begins to wane. So why do we want to be in touch with them quickly? Well, there are a couple of reasons. One, to catch them at the time of high emotional altitude. But two, when they fill out the contact me page, do they like you? And I would argue the answer is no. At best, they're neutral to you. You're a nobody to them at that point. So now that speed becomes even more critical because you can influence that conversation. Maybe this is going to end with a process where you're going to meet with them face to face at some point. But if you can get in there very, very quickly and let them know who you are right out of the gate, now you've caught them at a time of high emotional altitude and they get a sense of who you are. I've got a perfect example of this, and this is very, very timely because it happened this weekend. I'm about to switch financial advisors. And if you're watching this and you're a financial advisor, by the time you see this, I've already made a decision. But I appreciate your your first thought right there. That's good.
Way to preempt that.
So here's what happens, and this happened just this weekend. My wife listens to the Dave Ramsey podcast, right? So she said, "Hey Jeff, you know, if we're looking for financial advisors, he's got this thing where you fill out a bunch of information, and they send you 5 people in your area that might be good matches." And I was skeptical about it, and like, okay, well, I don't know what else to do, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. That's what I did. Immediately, here's what I got. I got a text message. Now, this is on the weekend here, so I didn't really expect a phone call, but I got a text message from one particular guy. Thanks for the inquiry. I'll be in touch very soon. Look for your email. And that caused me to pop over to the email, and the email had a little YouTube link on it. I clicked on the YouTube, and there was this guy just looking at it saying, "Hey, I just wanted you to be able to put a face to the name here. My name is Marshall. I'm away from my office right now, but I really want to talk. And by the way, we do a lot of stuff video, so I think it's more efficient for you. And Really looking forward to get to know you. That's it. That's the end of the conversation. Okay. So I got a text message, and now I've got that video, which allows me to see this guy's not an idiot. He's actually seems like a nice guy. I'm connected now. So then what happens? On Monday morning at 8:20 a.m., I get a call from this guy. He calls me. Now, I don't recognize the number, so I don't answer. It goes to voicemail. What happens next? I get a text message. It says, just left you a voicemail. Want to let you know I'm available all day if you want to chat. That's the idea. Okay, now here we are in less than, the first two that came in over the weekend. Now these 2 points of contact on Monday, 4 points of contact. Collectively, they sent me the list of 5 people that would be reaching out. Collectively, I've gotten 3 emails. They were all form emails from all of those others. This guy is so far the front runner that he would have to fall on his face. He's already lapped the competition, and we haven't yet spoken. So the idea here of being able to beat everybody to the punch and get the inside track even before you have your first conversation is not nearly as hard as it used to be. But here's the beautiful thing.
No, go ahead, finish. I'm sorry.
I'll say just one last thing here. How much time has that guy invested? The initial text was automated. The initial email was automated. He made one phone call and sent one text message after the phone call. His entire time investment on me personally has been less than 30 seconds, and he is well in the lead.
I love that story. I was going to ask, what did the other 2 people they just sent the autoresponder email?
Says, here's how you get on. And by the way, it wasn't even the financial advisors themselves. It's somebody who works for them. Here's how you get on Michael's calendar. Click on this link and we'll be more than happy to do that, which is fine. That's okay, but it's generic. There's nothing about me. There's nothing personal in there. There was no direct outreach that said, I care about you. And look, I'm not going to sit here and suggest to you that I'm Bill Gates, but I have enough of a financial background and wealth accumulation to say I'm probably somebody you want to talk to. Don't get me wrong. I'm not rolling in it, but I am a client you would want to have.
Right. The reason I asked you about what people did, because it's always sometimes good to know what people do wrong.
Yes.
And by sending somebody to a calendar is so impersonal. And this guy, out of curiosity, did the video have your name on it, or was it a generic video?
So that came on the weekend, and he was very upfront with it. He said, it's the weekend, but I wanted to be able to let you know who I am. So it was fine. It was no problem whatsoever.
I love that. But he teed it up that way.
He teed it up that way. And then I got the phone call first thing this morning, which was personal, right? He was just calling me. It wasn't a robocall. By the way, I did get one robocall in there from one of these financial advisors who I've now taken off the list. If your version of Followup is a recorded robocall, we're done before we started right here. Yeah.
But even this guy who's ahead of the game,
his
process is fixed, right? Text, email, watch the video, let him know I'm following up, call will be made, which he knows is going to go into voicemail, almost likely, right? Because nobody answers numbers. And then he follows up with a text. That's the cadence he's got down. And I just want to highlight that because a lot of people just get the lazy. Here's a calendar. Here's when he'll be available. And they think that a secretary, male or female, sending you something makes them look bigger. There's a perception there that's wrong. So that's a great example, Follow-Up. What else is in that book? Give me one more example before we wrap up here. Something that's, give me some meat. Give me some meat, Jeff. Come on, man. I'm loving this conversation, by the way.
When we look at that here, there are things that we can get deeper on with that example. First of all, I think the 2 superpowers for sales professionals, speed and personalization. If you are fastest, and if you are personalized in your approach, those are the 2 things that are going to get you to stand out more than anything else. Beyond that, the idea of creativity would be a 3rd superpower. And the thing is, I think a lot of salespeople think, I'm not that creative. It doesn't take that much. But I'm going to suggest you right now, video is where it's at. And it should not be cutting edge. I should not have to say this right now. But as long as people are refusing to get on the video train, this is going to continue to be cutting edge. Video is absolutely where it's at, and it doesn't take much. The opportunity to record a quick video, you don't have to be on it. You can be pointing it at your product and narrating at the same time. But video is where it's at. We are in a video age right now. If you just look at at just the number of people who are now bought into video, whether that's because they've got grandkids and they know how to FaceTime, whether it's because, they lived through a pandemic and they figured out how to Zoom, whatever it is, video is where it's at. And yet it's still being massively underutilized in the sales process.
Yeah, I talked about it a lot. You and I can appreciate video because we probably remember way back when you had the big VHS cameras you carried over your. Now,
Totally.
these phones are like HD. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
amazing quality.
Right. Yeah.
And I think salespeople have a hard time getting on video. There's that hesitation of presentation.
Yes.
So
it's a comfort
final words-
addiction, by the way. That's a comfort addiction.
Oh, there he is. He just nailed you
Yeah,
with that one.
that's what
He
it
nailed
is.
you with a comfort addiction, not a comfort addiction, man. Give me some wrap up notes here on the
Sure.
on the book here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, I would look at it from this perspective. You can't do what everybody else does and think you're going to separate from the crowd. That's just simply not the way it works. And, I've got, you can't see it right now, but I got a Jerry Rice football up here on the shelves behind me. And one of the things Jerry Rice said is, I do the things that people are not willing to do in order to achieve things that they will never achieve. And I think Followup is one of those types of opportunities. Too many salespeople look at it as a negative, as a pain in the butt, whatever it is. But you cannot separate yourself from the crowd if you're going to simply do what everybody else does. It doesn't have to be laborious. It can be fun. But when you do that, again, here's this one financial advisor. I will be talking to one today. He is so far ahead of the field, and we've not yet had a conversation. That's the goal now. In this environment, how do we advance that sale as far as we can, even if we haven't yet met the person? And then if they said, we want to think about it, then the key here, how do you sustain emotional altitude? That's the reason for Followup, is to sustain emotional altitude. The more time that goes by and the more impersonal your presentation is, the more that your customer is going to become unmoored from that emotional altitude. And that's when you lose the sale.
I love that. And one of the things, again, I want to highlight that I liked about your book was if you don't know what to say or how to go about it, your book really kind of lays a lot of stuff out for people.
Yeah.
Again, I told you how much I love that line about, I was thinking about your problem. And then I did some research, that whole phrase, and I was like, brilliant. It was so simple and so powerful. Yeah. And so there's many things in there. So Jeff, where can they find out more about you?
Yeah, so the book is available on Amazon, and everything else is at jeffshore.com. We put out a free Saturday morning 5-minute sales training every Saturday morning, and you can go to YouTube for that or sign up for it at jeffshore.com. But yeah, you can get the book on Amazon.
So the book, again, is Follow Up and Close the Sale. Jeff Shore. Like I said, I've read 2 of his books now. Highly recommend, or else he wouldn't be on the show. Let's be honest about that. I'm not going to invite somebody whose stuff I don't like onto the show. But anyway, Jeff, thank you very much for being on the Sales Influence podcast. I want to have you back again. We'll have to do this again somehow, okay? But thank you for being here.
Let's do it. Always good spending time with you, Victor.
Pressure. All right. And that's it for the Sales Influence podcast. Don't forget to leave me some feedback on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Pandora, Spotify, wherever you can find me. And also check out the Sales Velocity Academy at salesvelocityacademy.com. 50 courses, over 500 videos. If you want to increase your sales velocity, salesvelocity.com. Lastly, I want to thank you for listening. This is Victor Antonio with Jeff Shore, always reminding you that selling ain't hard when you follow up and you know how. Take care.